Hello, today we're going to keep rebuilding this John Deere 4020 diesel, and fortunately I have all the cam bearings here in stock now, so we're going to get on with it. First things first, I have the bearings somewhat in place on the inside of the engine, and we'll just drive it outwards. This is bearing number 1 toward the front. Turn on my light here, and I'm looking to see if we can line up that port with the hole right there. And we're so close, maybe it needs to go a bit clockwise and we'll be good to go, but aside from that, we'll be good. We're set back up. I have the cam bearing install driver all the way through the cam holes, and then I have the first bearing in here. We'll try and get that camera set up. And we'll try and drive it in. Let's see how we did. So from the front side, first bearing's in. It looks pretty good overall. And then our porthole on this side is just about even. So I'll call that a success, and we'll move on to number 2. We're set up to drive in the second bearing. One thing I wasn't as happy as I should have been about for the first bearing was I think it was a little bit loose on the mandrel when I was putting in the first bearing. So we've tightened up the second bearing a little bit around with the mandrel holding it from the inside. There wasn't any damage. It looks pretty good on both sides. It might be needing to be driven in a little bit more. Feeling my finger, I can feel the port for sure on that about 11 o'clock side. So considering that, I think this one's pretty good as well. Stay tuned for round 3. Alright, we're now set up for bearing number 3 here. Strike in. Okay, see how we did. Alright, on to number 4. I ended up, because there's this small port on the bottom, I think that's actually how the oil gets up to the top of the head to the valves, is through that back port, if I remember reading that right on the service manual. So I ended up doing a small mark there. Not sure if you can see it right here with a Sharpie, and then I just did a small markup here on the actual block itself, and that way I can orient everything properly and line it up even if I can't see it all that well. So we'll see how we do on this one as well. Loosen it a little bit. Try to more. Okay. See how we're lining up. And that is just about perfect there on the bottom side. And then let's take a look at the top side as well. It's a little close to the edge, but I didn't have much choice with this bottom side being as limited as it is. So good luck there, and we'll keep on moving. One of the next things I'm going to do is use assembly lube. For that, I'm going to use this Lucas high performance assembly lube. It's semi-synthetic, and it's just meant for to take up some of that slack when the engine takes a few seconds to build up the oil pressure after rebuilding it. Oil's not in those packages, and you certainly don't want oil, or you don't want metal parts to start rubbing. That's when you end up in bad times. So this is a pretty tacky solution. I personally haven't used it before, but it seems like it'll hold up quite nicely. Almost the consistency of honey. So it'll stay nice throughout, and then I'll put on the journals of the camshaft before we put that back in as well. Next, I'm going to put on this little cap that protects the backside and seals up the backside of the camshaft to keep oil from coming through and leaking out. So to do this, I have Formaseal from Permatex. The user manual, or rather the service manual, states that you should use Permatex to seal it on up here. Give me just a second to get the sealant on. I'm also going to just run it along the inside edge here as well, not going further than that. because then it'll drive it in. All right. Line those two pieces up here. I have a socket, pretty decent sized socket. There's a bear to get the old one out, so hopefully this one goes in a little bit easier. Let's try something else. All right, we're back, and this time I have just a 2x2 piece of wood, and I'm hoping that this doesn't mar it up. It wasn't marring it up yet, but I don't want it to get to that point, so keep on trying. Much better. All right. That looks to be about good. Very nice. Right about there. And maybe wipe it up a little bit. But I'm pretty happy with that overall. So on to the next. Here I got the camshaft of the 4020 out and on the floor. There's 4 journals. These journals are what the bearings run along. There's also lobes. Lobes like these ones and these ones run the exhaust and intake valve timing via push rods. There's a single eccentric lobe that is for the fuel pump. Likewise, there's a little drive spline over here, and that runs the oil pump, which in turn runs the fuel injector. So we'll get this in here in just a second. So we'll carefully slide this guy on through. It is not light, but it's meant to be tough. As gentle as we can be. Find a spot to grab onto to get it through while trying to protect the bearings here. We definitely have to protect our bearings. Almost to the last bearing here. There we go. Perfect. And there's 3 bolts that secure this thrust plate to the block, and then that's held on by these locking tabs and nuts. So we'll do that next. So we have the first bolt started and mostly driven in here. Tied it up a little bit, and we'll torque it down. I don't know what the torque spec on this is. I am using here, as soon as it focuses some, I'm using a hex driver type socket as opposed to the 12 point. So that should help not stripping any of the hex heads out of the bolts here. On to the next one. Outside. There we go. We're all done with the camshaft install. We have all the bolts torqued up. We went ahead and used the previous retainers that were in there and put them all on. So on to the next steel.